Hello, welcome to episode number 11. And my name is Torsten Tobel, as you know. And so today I'm going to talk about what else is possible. And it's been interesting because I've been doing a little bit of traveling and hanging out with some friends and family and whatnot. And it's interesting to get to see people that you haven't seen in a while and to see where they have changed and also where you have changed. And I get that today might be a bit of a rambling of a few different things. And yeah, we'll see what actually pops up today. But really, this question of what else is possible is kind of a neat one. I'm going to share just a quick story. The other day, I was in the grocery store and I was looking for some Coke actually. And I went to the aisle with all the soft drinks and they had everything but Coke. And so I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, seriously, the store, like, they have everything but Coke? Like, what's going on? And so, anyways, I was kind of frustrated for a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, so I got over myself. And I actually said, so what else is possible? And I kept on walking around the store looking for a couple of other things. And lo and behold, a little bit further down at an end aisle, there's all these packs of Cokes, cans of Cokes, cans of Coke. And so it was really interesting. Like within moments later, I actually found what I was looking for. And also got out of the point of view of my frustration basically and got into the space of actually asking a question and being in that space of the question and then having something else show up. So that's like a really, really tiny little example of what else is possible and the space that it can create. And it is something that I use actually quite frequently. It is a question that is actually my go-to question. So if I'm kind of in a strange space and I'm just gonna ask a question, whatever question it may be, that's the question that pops up, and that's the question I usually go to is what else is possible here, or what else is possible in general. And it's really going into the space of question that is kind of interesting to see, and it's been really fun because this week I actually got to play a bit. And um one of the people that I got to play with was my mom. I was visiting her, and there was a few instances in our conversation where she went into this place where she had a lot of like a really strong point of view about something, and there was no question in our world. And so what was really fun actually was just like talking about other possibilities. I'm like, yeah, I know, this is your point of view and this is the way you see this one particular situation. And what if that wasn't actually so? Like, what if this and what if that? And without saying what she was choosing was something that was inappropriate or wrong, it was just like, hey, there are other possibilities. Like, have you even considered that what you see as true may not be true, or it may be something else? And so it was really interesting in playing with that and like looking at different ways of looking at the world, and maybe seeing whatever you see isn't actually what actually is true, or is what is real, and that there could be other possibilities or there could be something else. And it was really neat to see her world change. And when she started looking at these different possibilities, she came to realize that whatever she had thought before, whatever her point of view is, whatever conclusion she had, could change and could be something else. And so she was open to that other possibilities, and then started opening to other possibilities. And you could just see the ease in her world, the change happening. And it was really cool. It was actually a lot of fun to see that show up. And that's really, really being that space, and the question of like, hey, like what else is possible here? I know we like have these situations show up and you're like, okay, it's this, it's this, it's this. And you just go straight into conclusion, and then there isn't any room for anything else. You've literally shut all the doors to the universe completely. And it's really interesting to see this show up in someone else. And it's so much easier to see in someone else because I also know I do that a lot. And so when you see it showing up in someone else and it is obvious to you, it's because you are aware that you do it too. And so it's really like all the places that I go into conclusions about things, like that there wasn't any Coke in the store, which wasn't actually true. It was just my conclusion, and I had frustration around it. And when I was willing to move out of that, something else showed up. And I actually ended up in the end aisle that actually had it. And had I not been in the question, I might not have actually shown up. I might not actually have gone there in the store because I didn't actually go around the entire store looking. And so these other possibilities kind of start to show up in your world and play, and actually that you can actually see that there is something else possible. And it's kind of interesting because I know this is a really like basic or like simple example with looking for the Coke in the store and so on, but it pertains to everything in your life, and it's really all all these quote unquote small things that end up showing up that create your entire life. They're the 10-second increments of your entire life that create your entire life. And so it may be a small thing initially, but these are the things that actually create your reality. And every time we go into these places that we have these intense points of views or these intense conclusions about what actually is when we look at something, and instead we do start asking, like, what else is possible? Like, what am I not willing to see? What is actually possible that's way beyond that I've ever considered? That would allow things to show up in a way that um, is something that's not even in my universe in this very moment. And so it is really about creating that space of something else to show up. And it is like, how often do we see things and you're like, it must be about this and it must be that and it's this and it's that. And you don't actually ask any questions around it. And what's interesting is it's also, what's interesting is there's also the space beyond the question, or actually it's more like when you are actually being the space of the question. That's probably a better way of describing it. When you're actually being the space of the question, and it's not actually always a requirement or necessary to actually ask the question, because sometimes you are just being that space. You're literally being the space of like, what else is possible? And you may not actually be saying those words. And really, it is great to actually say the words too, because when you say the words, it actually gets you to focus on that energy and that space of what else is possible here. And almost like also you can ask, what else is possible here that I've never considered? Because there's so many places and so many things that can show up in your world, and they show up in ways that you would never consider or even think that it is possible for them to show up. And it's really interesting. What I notice is almost everything that I look at or ask for or be in the space of, it almost never shows up the way that I thought it would. And it's almost like whenever you are looking for a different possibility or being in the space of a different possibility, it literally does show up in a way that you never considered. And it really does create, it's almost like that's the actual way that magic gets created, or it's the way that magic shows up in our life in a way, because you really start to play then in the space of like, wow, seriously, what else is possible that I've never considered? You really are in that space. And then all these could be what you would consider as tiny things start showing up in like just bizarre ways, like, and maybe not that bizarre, and you're like, wow, like, and so all these, it's like this kind of movement of like, kind of like in a movement of awe, in the sense that your life just ends up being in a kind of like an explosion of like, wow, had I not been any questions, none of these things that are showing up or that have showed up would ever come about, because you wouldn't have actually allowed them to. You would have been that controlling person that we all are to try to control everything and make it show up the way that we think it should, which isn't actually that much fun and takes a lot of work to do. And so it's really like that play of, wow, what else can I create here? And what other space can I be that can really turn your entire world around in a different way? And how much fun can you actually start having? And, it isn't real. It isn't real in the sense that sort of what popped up is when things pop up, and maybe it's more with people, like people pop up and you get frustrated with people or whatever, and you go into that, what else is possible here? And also remembering that whatever shows up with people, it's not personal. I know that's been popping up a lot. It's like, what else is possible? And it's not personal. Whatever's going on for other people, and whatever shows up in relationships with other people. And it's like, right, so if it's not personal, I don't need to take it on. Don't need to buy the story or buy their story or buy my own story. What you're doing to yourself is probably also not personal. And so, and really like be like, okay, so what else can I do here? What else can I choose? What else can I be? What other energy, space, and consciousness can I be to create the change that I'm looking for, create the change maybe in this particular moment? Um, and it's really all these different questions that you can ask and be aware of, like, we actually came here to have fun. And if you're not having fun, like, what else is possible? Like, what else can you actually look at? What else can you play with? What else can you choose that you haven't chosen before that might be uncomfortable? Um, and it might be more than uncomfortable in the sense that, like, it's actually really, really, really exciting. And the other thing that actually I noticed this week too is like how many times people misidentify fear or what was the other one that showed up? There was another word that someone was using, but using it as a way to stop you, because it is actually exciting. Like that excitement that shows up when you look at a different possibility in your life and what else you can change. And I know for me, like there's things that I'm choosing and looking at and stepping into that I'm like, I don't know. Like I don't know how this is gonna go. I don't know what this will create. I mean, I have a sense of what it will create, but I don't have a clue on the details on any of this, and how it's gonna actualize. And so, and that's kind of like, that's really being in the space of like, wow, literally anything can show up here. And the details of the actualization of it is not clear at all. Yet the energy's there and it's fun. And it really is that energy of like, okay, so what else is possible here? Wow, this is kind of like crazy. I've never chosen something like this. And what can it create? And being aware of like what it can create and what else can kind of show up in a way that we don't really keep it small, in a way that we don't limit it in any way. And it's funny how I've also noticed that sometimes space is what kind of scares people, which is weird because it's not actually scary. For me, it's super fun and yummy and I love it. But it's so undefined. And because we live, or we think we live in a world that's super defined, and the world is kind of defined, it's based on definition. Um, what if space was something completely different? And what if it was also something that we've kind of misidentified? What if it was the space that actually is something that can contribute to creating way beyond anything we've ever created before? And what if that space that you've been trying to fill up or turn into like structure or something, or I don't know, like to fill up the space so that it isn't expansive? What if that was something that you looked at changing? And so it's really all these different places that we can go, and these different places that we can play with. All this can just show up in a simple question of what else is possible all the time. And for me, that's the question that works really well. And that's why I've chosen to speak about it today. And it can be something else. It can be a different question that you choose to ask in every single moment. And so see what works for you. You know, maybe it's, how does it get any better than this? Maybe it is, you know, what energy, space, and consciousness can me and my body be to create whatever. So it can be like all these different questions, and it's really like looking what works for you. And you know, maybe it's like, who does this belong to, or whose lies and what lies? And you know, so whatever. I've been playing with that one tons. It's been super fun too, the whose lies and what lies. And just seeing, and it really gets you to move out of this reality, which is such a limitation, to really move into being more space and having more fun with it. And it's like, it's so interesting also too, like I've also noticed in lately too, anytime recently I've gone into the space of being frustrated or in resistance of something, um, it's really asking like, who does this belong to? And for me, actually, what works better in this 10 seconds is the whose lies and what lies am I buying, basically, about this. And it's just so interesting to see how aware we are and to acknowledge how aware we are. And I love the conversation that Dane has been talking about lately, where he's basically been saying, you know, we are an infinite being and this reality is in us. We're not in this reality. And when you really start getting the energy of that and really start playing with the energy of that, it's like we literally show up as beyond this reality. And when you show up in that space, it's like this reality becomes a total playground. It doesn't show up in your world anymore as this place that you have to function in. No, you get to actually play in this reality. Because it's like this reality, it is like almost a tool. You get to play with it. And it's like, and when you start playing with it more, you know, it doesn't run you, and you don't buy the stories of it, and you don't buy the limitations of it. And you just like look at it and go, huh, so what can I change? What can I do different? How can I play with it different? And it really goes into this, it really starts showing up for me anyways. I've started to realize like I have not been allowing myself to really play in this reality in the way that I know I can. And there are so many possibilities. And actually, one of my favorite things is actually from Steve Bowman. And he talks about, what are you looking for? He was talking about money and it being infinite. And he's like, are you always looking for where the money is? And you can use that for anything. Are you looking for the limitation in yourself? Or are you looking for the total possibility in yourself? Or in something else? Or in whatever? But it's so interesting because one of the things that I know I do is my default is looking at the limitation that I am, which I'm not actually, but that's what I look for. And guess what? That's what you find. So you literally find everything you look for. It's kind of like ask and you shall receive. Whatever you're asking for, whatever you're looking for, it will show up. So if you're constantly looking for your limitations and how crappy you are and how terrible you are and all those kinds of things, you're going to find that. And so it's really, as part of the question of what else is possible, it's like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for ways that you are limited? Or are you looking for ways that you are so expansive and so beyond this reality that when it shows up in your world, you literally have to laugh because that's pretty much all you could do. And there was another question of, oh yeah, the other question, I know I've talked about this one before, but it is so, so cool. And it's been working for me a lot because I do go into what's wrong with me. And so what's right about me that I'm not getting. And I did a whole talk about this in previous episodes, but it really gets you into the space of moving beyond looking for your limitations all the time. And it really gets you into looking at the brilliance of you. And because it's usually so easy to see the brilliance in other people. I mean, I am super fortunate. I have amazing people in my life and super brilliant people and super potent and people that have my back. And it is amazing, yet there's so many times where I don't look at the brilliance of me and I can see it in everyone else. And what I am super grateful for is that I have people that remind me of that. And also reminding yourself like what is right about me that I'm not getting and how much that can shift things. And I have been playing with that as well too. So these are like a whole bunch of questions that pretty much make up my daily play. And sort of it's as I'm playing with this more and being these questions more and more, like my world, the possibility has been so interesting to see what shows up and how different things show up. And it's been really, really neat in like just even if I look back in the last like 2 months of my life, like just to see how things have been unraveling and how things have been, how there's just so much more space and possibility and so much more play. And this is really the main reason I'm talking about this is because every single person has this available to them. It's not just me. It's not just some people that I know around me. It's literally everyone. And all it comes down to is choice. To choose something else. And if something isn't working, then you just choose something else. And it's not significant. It's just like, oh, it's a choice. Huh, I did some really stupid things there. Yay. What else can I choose? And it's really playing with that. And, and it's the willingness to like look at it and go, okay, huh, this isn't actually fun for me. This isn't working for me. What else is possible here? And what would I like to choose? And it's really looking at those choices and also not making them significant either. It's like, cool, I get to choose something else. Oh, that didn't work. Or something, you did something like, oh, that was pretty fun. I'll do more of that, or I'll have more of that, or whatever. And so it is it is just seeing really the expansiveness that we are and saying, cool, so what can we do with this? How can we play with this reality? That would be super fun. And what are you willing to receive? Are you willing to receive the total gift of you? Are you willing to receive the gift that everything is? And if you aren't, like, whose lies and what lies have you bought that you can't receive you totally? And that you can't have total joy and ease in your world? And what if you could? What else would be possible then? So, with that, have an amazing day, have an amazing week. Um, Come play again next week. Let me know if anything shows up in your world. And share what, if you have some different fun things that haven't shown up in a long time, and maybe some of these questions did show up this coming week. So, and what else, what energy, space, and consciousness can you be in the world? And what energy, space, and consciousness are you already in the world that you haven't acknowledged? And how much fun can you have? Awesome. Have an amazing day. Bye.